Hey, welcome back to Fire Engineering's Humpday Hangout and to our show, the issues and challenges in today's fire service. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, along with my good buddy, and as I always say, my good buddy from another mother, and Terry McGrath, Assistant Chief in Louisville. We've been together a long time, Terry, and we've got one of our regulars, Chief Scott Thompson, one of the regular. Not to steal anything from Fox News that I have fun working for, but the five. And we're missing Chief Salka today, and then hopefully Chief David Rhodes, the boss, will be able to join us. But we've got another great show lined up for you today. We've got two very special guests. We've got Assistant Chief Kyle Mills from Frisco, Texas, the land of money when it comes to the fire service. I got to throw that out there, Chief.
Yeah, of course.
Kyle is the Deputy State Coordinator for TIFMIS, which we're going to be talking about TIFMIS. And we've got my chief, Chief Ryan Fetzer from Wichita West. That being said, a reminder, if you have any questions on social media, throw them out there. We'll do our best, as we always do, to get to them. Our topic today that Terry and I talked about a little while back is a state mutual aid program that works. And first off, welcome, guys. Welcome back, Scott. And welcome, Ryan and Kyle.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Chief.
Glad to be on.
And one of the things, like I said, we kind of bounce all over the place with these shows, and then we do a lot of talking afterwards sometimes. And Scott and Terry and I have been together, it seems like forever, as partners in that. And Scott and I have taught at FDIC for literally decades now. But if you look at the lower 48, and first of all, you know what, Scott, and I was waiting. I thought you'd jump on me for not doing this. We want to send our thoughts and prayers out to Maui. Scott and Ryan, you've met him, Shane and Terry. Shane's family, his wife's family was right there. There's 15 firefighters. They're going to be coming up with a link pretty soon. There's 15 firefighters that lost everything. They don't have a T-shirt. They have nothing. They lost everything they own. Their spouses and their children. It's horrible. And they're going to be posting either a GoFundMe or a Venmo or something where they already have posts out there where you can help some of the different people lost things, but in particular, these 15 firefighters who lost everything, and they're still working. It's absolutely amazing. And I don't want to even read you Shane's text messages back to me because it brings a tear to your eye. These guys are still working. They never left their post. They're still working. They have nowhere to go. They have no homes. They have no clothes. They have nothing. So we're going to get that out there. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. That being said, when you talk about a major incident like that, we've always looked towards California when it comes to the wildland interface scenario, because they've been doing it a long time. If you look back at the history on the command system, that our godfather Scott, Chief Alan Brunacini, the incident command system for the fire service got its birth from the wildland stuff. When I got to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, leaving the south side of Chicago, I told them when I got up there, the wild interface program, or the scenario where I came from in Chicago, is when the little buildings caught the big buildings on fire. And I got out there, got introduced to big pointy trees and guys jumping out of airplanes with dog training suits and saws strapped to their back and all kinds of stuff. And I loved it. It was quite the challenge. So that being said, you look at Florida, different places at the different programs. Now, Florida does a great job. California, there's a couple out there that I'm not going to mention that are having difficulty because of egos and other things. And I thought it was time, and Terry as well, to talk about the program right here out of Texas, TIFMIS, and we'll talk about that in a second here, about the success of the program. And I want to say this for some of our viewers: there's no such thing as perfect out there. There's no such thing as a perfect fire department. There's no such thing as a perfect system. But I'm telling you, they got this shit right when they went with this TIFMIS program. It's challenging for those behind the scenes, behind the curtain, like Kyle and Terry and their group, that we don't ever see that stuff because everybody's out there doing it. But before we jump in there, Terry, your thoughts on TIFMIS, but the program and the success of it, and then we'll jump to Kyle and Scott, and then I want my Chief Ryan to get in there because he's been using the hell out of it the past month in all our fires. So, T?
Well, and thanks for that.
I can tell you that, and Kyle can speak more at length about the program, the history of the program, or how we got to where we are. And I'll give him all the credit in the world, because he's certainly been at this a long time and had a lot to do with the success of the program that we're seeing today. And just to give you a quick snapshot, as of today, we have 15 strike teams and 2 hand crews out that are all municipal paid and or volunteer firefighters from across Texas that are out in the field 24/7. We've been out we're on our 4th consecutive week. And we were told a couple of days ago this will extend at least another 3 weeks. And of course, it's in response to what's happening in the state of Texas. And we'll talk a lot about wildland today, because that's kind of our most frequent activity. But TIFMAS as a whole kind of has 2 components. It's the wildland part, which we're sending not just bodies out, but they are fully qualified, vetted, task book, documented, qualified people to go out and support the Texas Forest Service. And as Chief of Emergency Management Nim Kidd always says, is Texans helping Texans. And so the program is really, really incredible. And for me, and Kyle could certainly echo this, what makes it really amazing is how it works. When the Forest Service goes out to a fire, and I'll use Possum Kingdom as an example, that's close to the Metroplex, within a couple of hours, we seem to be out there on an annual basis, if not a semi-annual basis. But they could go out on a fire at 3 o'clock, pull up there, realize what they have, realize they need force multipliers, and they need assets quick. With a simple phone call, a couple of text messages, and the 8 branch coordinators going to work, we can have, just for an example, we could have them 3 full qualified, ready to go strike teams on the ground, actively engaged in fire. And we could do that within a couple of hours. And that's really, really, really a testament to the program and you mentioned egos, because we're dealing with Forest Service, we're dealing with Texas Emergency Management, we're dealing with a lot of fire departments, but everyone comes to the table for the one purpose, one mission, which is to get out the door and do the fun stuff, right? And so it's an incredibly successful program. And since this started, Chief, right? So we will respond to hurricanes. We have responded to flooding. We've responded to other weather disasters. We are supporting the Texas border mission down there with fire suppression assets at some certain locations. So what I always like to brag upon, or what I'm extremely proud of about TIFMAS, is that whatever the state needs, they call us. And Kyle could say we're probably one of their first phone calls, because it's if you need something done, call some firemen, they'll do it. And that's kind of I guess if we had a motto or a patch or something, maybe you could say something like that. We came out of COVID-19, and TIFMAS was involved in administering COVID-19 vaccines and helping with PPE and helping to get out to the rural areas. And I mean, there's just a litany of things that TIFMAS has been and will continue to be involved in.
Well, and before we jump to you, Kyle and Scott, you remember before TIFMAS, and Terry, I don't know if you went with us at the time or whatever. Remember when we had the big one, St. Joe, Nacona, all that was burning, and it was so frustrating. I was frustrated and very outspoken after our failure when it came to Katrina to be able to cross the state line. And then, in Denton County, we dump half the county, and there was no run cards, box cards, and it was just a mess. And we put together the first, the Wildland Task Force. Then we put the all hazards. And I remember talking with Jody. Remember, I'm like, you got to get us in the mix where, people are dying up there. And it was like 4:30. Remember, T and Scott, it was like, okay, we're going. And we met at the Denton Mall and we took off. And I'll never forget pulling up there to their command post at the Public Works Bar. Remember that? And I had I won't say who he was, but Terry, you remember, for a command tech. We walk into there and he looks at the patch. He goes, Louisville from down there, DF&W. And he goes, I go, yeah, we didn't jump it. We're approved. We're here. We came to help. He goes, you bring a brush truck or an engine? I said, we brought 11 brush trucks, 8 engines, 2 quints. We have a fuel truck, our own mechanic, our own fuel and water for 24 hours, our own communication, and 4 command teams. And he goes, well, son, just go out and get you some. And I'm like, what the hell does go out and get you some mean? But I'll tell you, I was frustrated as all get out because of all the broken down brush trucks, the volleys and gear. It was so frustrating. And then to see that, and now Kyle, and I used to say Texans helping Texans, to sit there and go from that mess to me getting a little rude with Governor Perry in a meeting, and seeing Tiffmas now to where you're pre-staged, ready to go. I'm just saying. So, I mean, Scott, real quick, I mean, your thoughts before we jump to Kyle and Ryan. To see it go from there to there, like Terry said, is and for everything. I'm glad he mentioned it. Not just Wildland. We're talking, if you need something and it's something legit, big, whatever, they're coming. I don't care what it is. They're going to find a way to the resource, Scott, right?
No, you're exactly right, Rick. And if you'll remember back right after you got here, you remember we had that big fire out in Argyle that you showed up on, and it seemed like half the world was on fire, and we won't get in details how that went. But no, I remember Joe Florentino kind of getting this started, and my main role in Tiffmas was early on is getting deployed on some calls and taking a couple crews to some wildfires, and then we sent some folks out to the hurricanes and stuff. But it's just been great to watch it.
Shot a bull. Daryl's crew had a deputy shoot a bull down there. Remember that was on the news.
Yeah, shot a bull. And I'm a little bit familiar with what Mavis does, which is an exceptional system there. So to see Texas come together and do this, and how much it's grown, and it's just phenomenal. And my hat's off to everybody who's involved, Terry and Kyle and you guys that do it day to day. But yeah, it's really been neat seeing it continue to grow. I think there's still a lot of things cool things are going to happen with it. But it's just been very interesting. I guess, how long ago did it start up? Kyle, what was it when Joe started really talking about it?
Yeah, so really the godfather, if you will, at Tiffmas was Steve Pollitt. And Steve had this vision.
Steve, right, Pollitt.
Yeah. And he worked with, Metroplex chiefs like Chief Lasky and Chief Florentino and Chief Duffield, who was at the time running Pilot Point and Salina. And they worked together and really got this pushed through. And state law was established in 2007. And then we had our first official Tiffmas deployment in 2008. And I know you guys remember because you've been Denton County for a while, but that was back in the days when Joe Florentino would send a text message to your group and just say, hey, we're getting on the road and let's go.
Yeah.
Yep.
And nobody batted an eye about it. And we went to Jacksboro in 2009 and, continue through history. But Steve really put together a quality program. He realized that we were going to have buy-in from a whole lot of organizations. And so he created this stakeholder group, and that's made up of the Texas Fire Chiefs Association and the Commission and the State Firemen's and Fire Marshals Association.
And the COG groups, the Council of Governments.
Yeah. And he recognized that we needed to have buy-in from the field, the troops too. So TSAF sits on that stakeholder group. And this group kind of guides the direction of the force or of the group. But once Steve kind of got this all through the legislature, Joe Florentino made a phone call that Terry would later make to me and regret, I'm sure. But Joe says, how can I help? And Steve said, well, congratulations, you're the first state coordinator. Is how you're going to help. And so we had the pleasure of hearing Steve give us the whole background at Symposium last year. And we're going to get to have Joe Flo at this year to kind of take off the next step of what it was like to be the first state coordinator.
Well, and if I could, Kyle, Steve was, if our viewers, was the fire chief, I believe, in Cedar Hill.
Yes, sir.
And then he went to work for the Forest Service, which really helped because that gave him some go when everything was coming together.
Yes,
what a champion. It wasn't like, here's this municipal fire chief trying to push this statewide he had some backing from some pretty good people to put that together, like you said. And that's what it takes, is the stakeholders to get in there, everybody to be able to say, this is what we need.
Yeah. Yeah, and he did exactly that. And he coordinated a group of strong fire chiefs like yourself that had some tough conversations and was really able to put it together. But you had mentioned earlier, we do everything, all hazards, right? And Chief Kidd, he couldn't be on here today. I asked him, to join us, but he had a prior obligation. But um, in his words, he says, when nobody knows who to call, they call the fire department, and none is truer in Texas than Tifmas. I know Chief Thompson was on that phone call that he got put together with a bunch of Metroplex chiefs on testing nursing homes when COVID came about. So it's been this litany of just when they don't know who to call, it's just like the normal fire department, they call us.
And I think some places, and I know this for a fact, it's strictly the statewide program really is just strictly wildland to a lot of people. That's all they do. And that's why I'll say it. I'm so proud to know what we have right here that, I know we're going to break this down a little bit. So there are people that are watching that can go back and where they don't even have, there's people that I travel all over, they have, Scott, you too, they have nothing. You mentioned MABUS, and we'll talk about what TIFMA stands for in a second. I was part of MABUS on the committee for 15 years, but all the years in Illinois is a mutual aid box alarm system, which has been around for like 100 years. And, it started in Chicago area and it grew, and it's a great system that worked, that they blew up. But to see TIFMAS evolve to where it's at, Ryan, you know how much I love working for you. And I'm not to embarrass you. These guys know what I brag on you all the time, that I got a great chief I work for at Wichita West. You and Andy did a phenomenal job, by the way. Terry, this last one, this Hawkeye, I mean, the two of them hooking up together and being a little bit separate and then getting together was just awesome. But Ryan, from your end as a fire chief, as the user, you're in the thick of it with everything around you on fire. Let's just talk wildland. The importance to you as a fire chief of having this program at your fingertips. And then we'll get into like with Kyle and break it down a little bit. Go.
It's amazing to have this. And, I started before Tifmas was there also. We've seen what it's like to have all those local resources depleted, just looking for some sort of help to come. This past week was a perfect example. Between Wichita County, Archer County, we had almost 13,000 acres burning, 3 very large fires, and every single local resource was deployed to a fire somewhere. Along with still trying to run medical calls, we had 2 structure fires separate from the wildland incidents and stuff. So knowing we had TIFMAS coming our way with those strike teams was very invaluable, along with the other TFS resources we had coming and stuff. We had no more help to call. There were no other trucks to call. Every single department within our 2-county area was out there battling these fires. They were burning over 8,000 acres in Archer County, and we're burning over 5,000 acres at the same time in Wichita County. It's great being a part of TIFMAS. Like it was kind of said, Terry said a little while ago, we don't put many trucks or deployments with a lot of the wildland from our side, even though we are TIFMAS members as well. On the volunteer side, we've had trucks put on standby, but it's hard to assign our equipment and our guys on it when TIFMAS is coming to our area so often, because we do burn pretty frequently up here. Flipping into the all hazard side is a completely different story. I've been put on standby with a tender to deploy to Louisiana for hurricanes. Been put on standby going down south for hurricanes and stuff. So the all hazards are a little bit different on the volunteer side. When we're not burning, we can try and free those up. But it's real hard to say, hey, we're going to put this, type 6 and a 3-man crew on this truck and go stage up in Burke Burnett to respond locally when we just keep it at our station and respond to our own fires as it is.
Well, and I just know that the other day, I'm out there driving for you, and we're out there fighting fire, and we're getting spun around, and it was just, it was nasty.
We're dealing with Saturday were horrendous.
It was every time I hear you key up, we're either out of stuff or the wind changed direction again. But a couple times, and when we finally heard TIFMAS, we had a task force coming. That's almost that's like. That's like, here comes your chaplain on a bad baby call. That was like such a welcomed radio message to hear that, you've got one coming. Because I know at one point they called you from KMA, that area, saying we needed dozers. And we're like, everybody's trying to be able to run the incident. And Kyle and, Scott and Terry, your chiefs are out there, to be able to run an incident like Ryan's doing and know they've got this group you guys taking care of coordinate, they've got enough stuff to take care of. It's like taking your dispatch center out of Frisco and saying, you know what, we're not going to do it anymore. You figure out how you're going to get people to the scene, of a 25 unit apartment building complex, but so Kyle, real quick, and I think we missed this, explain the acronym TIFMIS.
Yeah.
And then throw the website out there real quick if people are watching this, they want to check out the website. But
sure, it's Texas Intra-State Fire Mutual Aid System, which is interesting because we've gone out of state a few times now, so we may need to look at changing that. But it's www.tifmis.org. And you brought up something a minute ago, Chief, that this is not just a paid organization, and I brought up the numbers while we were talking a minute ago. We have, and now this is as of January of 23, so the numbers have changed a little bit, but we have 78 volunteer fire departments and members of TIFMIS, 103 combination departments, 131 career departments, and totaling over 9,000 all hazards firefighters in the state of Texas that can come together. Kind of what's more interesting than that is we have over 5,000 wildland certified firefighters. And when you put it up on a chart, there's only 3 agencies in the entire United States that have more wildland firefighters in the state of Texas that are qualified. Number 1 being Cal OES, number 2 being the U.S. Forest Service, number 3 being Cal Fire, just barely beats us. And then there's TIFMIS. So it's something to really be proud of in the state of Texas.
And that's one thing going from, and Terry and Ryan, him, going from Brandon Woodward was our only wildland firefighter in the state of Texas at one point. And Woody is probably one of the most experienced, one of the best, one of the go-to guys for this stuff. But going from that, and guys wearing structural gear at wildland stuff to where it's at today is pretty phenomenal. Excuse me. So, excuse me. Let's do this. Let's start. We start at the beginning and let's talk about participation and let's walk through the program, how you deal with, and you brought up something that Ryan and I have talked about recently. There was this misinformation out there that volunteer departments were not allowed to be part of TIFMIS. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I know plenty of volunteer fire departments. And me, I've been a volunteer and a career guy for a long time. I got 45 years in the fire service, and nothing pisses me off more than people that they call themselves brothers and sisters in the fire service, but they trash other firefighters because they're not paid. There are volunteer fire departments out there that couldn't afford a part-time person, let alone a career department. So, check your ego at the door. Most of those people that run their mouths like that can't even fight structure fires the right way, let alone wildland stuff. So volunteers are definitely part of this program. I want to make that point out there.
Well, not only that, Chief, but there's some of our most active groups. And you hit the nail right on the head, and I completely agree with you. You got a guy that's not getting paid doing something. It's because he wants to be there, and it's because he loves it. And those guys are so dedicated. I'm one of them. I'm a volunteer too. So, it's something that is truly important, and our system couldn't exist today without it.
Well, exactly. And, we look at like Wichita West, Chief Fetzer. I mean, we've got a small budget, volunteer, like a lot of other volunteer departments. We do a ton of fundraisers, and we're always mooching. We're always trying to get stuff. But everybody, this is not an on-call system for us. It's not there's no point system for a lot of departments like you see with the LoSAP program in New York. And it truly is people volunteering. They're a lot of them buy sometimes their own stuff. We're pretty fortunate because our chiefs do a really good job with grants and getting us stuff, but we see other people around us that show up that have nothing, and that's why that Helping Hands program is such a big thing in Texas. Maybe we could touch on that a little bit too. In fact, you know what, Terry, talk about the Helping Hands program real quick before we miss that. Okay.
Yeah. So we, anyone who works in the fire service in Texas knows that, we wear protective clothing. It's got a 10-year limit on it. At the end of 10 years, it's end of life. And so you're stuck with what do you do with that equipment? And it's been explained many, many times that you own equipment for life, and you own the liability of the equipment for life. So you're really kind of stuck with what do you do with it. We don't auction our equipment, personal protective equipment. We don't auction it. So really our two choices is we could destroy it so that we absolve ourselves of the liability if it's not out there to be used. But the state of Texas kind of filled a void with that. And so they have kind of codified the process that we can donate our gear to the Texas Forest Service as the managing entity over the program. But I donate our PPE to a program called Helping Hands. It's managed by the Forest Service. They send someone to our station. They pick all the gear up. We sign a little piece of paper saying we're signing this over to you. And through that kind of a gateway, the Texas Forest Service can then distribute that much needed equipment to volunteer departments that need it. And so it's a fantastic program. And it's funny because when the Forest Service sends somebody, they'll show up and when you load them up with 30 sets of protective clothing, and Chief, in Louisville, we use our stuff for 10 years, and some guys, not this guy, you get my gear after 10 years, you're getting like a new set of gear. But when you're loading gear, but we maintain it, it's well taken care of. It's inspected every year. It's repaired. So when it goes out the door at 10 years, it's good equipment. And when they're loading that into their truck or trailer, they leave here with 30 or 40 sets of full PPE that they're going to turn around and give to a volunteer department that's having to have a barbecue or a car wash or something just to buy something, right? So it's a fantastic program, and that's certainly a column where I would say over here, hey, the state of Texas got this right.
Well, and Scott, we've talked about paying it forward. We did a show before. John and I said one of the articles I just submitted to David, paying it forward, whether it's apparatus, Chief Fetzer that we do, we've been the recipient, we've been fortunate, or gear. I remember Terry, when we did the 2 sets of gear in Louisville, some of the guys drive all the time are handing in gear that's still in the plastic. We want to make sure they have 2 sets of gear. So when they dirty one up, we can put it in the extractor and they got another set and so on and so forth. But between Frisco and the Colony and Louisville, I'm just looking at 3 departments right there that have plenty to share. And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, it's more than just turnout gear. You can donate, there's other equipment, things like that. So
packs,
for viewers,
tools, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, they take everything on, and you can, and there's a
Novels.
website. If you Google Helping Hands in Texas, you'll get to the program and explains the process. But go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
No, I was just chiming in and saying, some hose and nozzles and stuff. Just we even gave them some radios and stuff when we replaced ours. So they'll take just about anything and repurpose it and find a great use for it, and really help out these organizations that just don't have the money that some of us have with a strong tax base.
Exactly. So Helping Hands, plural. So let's go back to Tiff. Ms. Ryan, I want to throw it to you before we zip over to Kyle. So we get bumped out right now. All right. We get bumped out right now, just like the other day. Walk us through, you're getting there, whether it's with, Chief Andy Payne from Isle Park today or our own gig, which we've had, over here a bunch of times. The process of looking for TIFMIS and looking for the troops, the cavalry to get there as we're deploying our 1s and 2s, and we've got 1 brush truck from this department, a tender from here, and all that. You're trying to piecemeal this whole big giant puzzle together. Let's talk about the notification. What do you do when you get there? How do you pull the trigger or drop the hammer and get TIFMIS coming?
So for us, it's pretty easy, especially having TFS staged right here in our county. We've got a task force, Boomtown Task Force from Texas Forest Service is based out of Burke Burnett, Wichita County right here. So once we get on scene with our automatic aid partners, mutual aid partners, we determine that we're going to need additional resources, whether that be dozers, aircraft, or additional engines, additional tenders that are outside our immediate available. It's a simple phone call from me, usually directly to our local task force. We can get dispatch, reach out to them, our emergency management, but due to the relationship, I'll call them directly, say, hey, we need the resources out here. TFS will ask a few questions, how many acres are burning, what kind of containment do you have, what structures are threatened. Structure response is the biggest thing that they're looking for. They want to put the strike teams, put the resources where it's going to actually save structures, residents, businesses. If it's just lanes, you may be a little bit lower on the priority list when you're burning, 15,000 acres over 3 different fires and stuff. but they'll very quickly try and get a representative out there, confirm what the IC is telling them, and then they'll work together. What resources do you need? Let's see where we can get them. You may get TFS resources, you may get a TFS task force, you may get the TIFMAS task force. They'll help coordinate again the aircraft in. Saturday we had 12 aircraft on. Actually, I guess Terry said we had 14 aircraft total on our fire alone Saturday. Quite a few structures were threatened. The wind shift we were dealing with, we did multiple evacuations in different areas at different times because of it. But it's very easy to get those resources started and headed our way with just making that phone call to TFS. Because we can work directly with them, it does not necessarily require star requests or something right off the bat. When they're not staffed up, then we have to go, a little bit more that route, get with our emergency management, get with the district chair, and then get a star request going in to, try and get them mobilized.
Well, like I said,
I'll jump in here, Chief, and just another point really to say how proactive and somebody got smart. So, this applies to Texas, but anybody in Texas knows that we used to operate kind of on a deal like if you laced your shoes, you had to get a star. And so it's paperwork, it's bureaucratic, and it's not that it's not needed, but we lived and died by a star, and it was a star for everything. You know what? Somebody came along, and I'll credit, NIM Kids staff, whoever came up with that. If I have the information right, but they said, look, this is dumb. Even for the state of Texas, this is dumb, right? So they issue a star in advance for a large allocation of resources, manpower, and equipment. And now the Texas Forest Service is cleaned up because when Ryan makes that request, Texas Forest Service calls down there to their operations center. That's all the coordination that's needed. We are already pre-approved, if you will, to get out the door.
Well, and so Terry, talk about your role, and then we'll jump to, obviously, Kyle is the serves as the deputy state coordinator, but so let's jump to you, because you and I've talked plenty of times about, I know some of your frustrations just trying to get enough resources because you're dealing with so many different agencies and all that. And again, you know me, I have very much of a filter, and the egos and Scott's laughing, Scott knows, the egos and the power trips and the butthurt feelings of people that are in leadership roles is absolutely amazing that they make it up as high as they do. But your role, Terry, what you're doing, and then we'll throw it to Kyle. Let's put this together.
So I serve as a branch. There's 8 branches within the state. I serve as a branch coordinator. It's actually Kyle's previous job. I tell everybody, I called Kyle one day. I was interested in doing this. I didn't really know him. And I said, hey, I'm kind of interested in getting involved in this TIFMAS thing. And is there anything I could help you do? And he said, absolutely. When can you start? It doesn't pay anything. So anyway, I sit here today. Kyle was tapped and elevated within the organization. So I took over the North Branch. And so the state is divided into branches. The North Branch is 32 counties. It's basically the DFW Metroplex. We stretch down as far as Waco. We go up to the Oklahoma border on the north side. And it just, as luck would have it for Kyle previously and me now, is that the North Branch is probably the busiest that we have. And it's for a couple different reasons. We're very dense with agencies. We got a lot of participation from those agencies, but we're very seldom impacted by anything that we're helping out with. And that's important to know. If a hurricane is bearing towards the coast, we're not going to try to solicit resources from the communities down there because they're fixing to deal with it at their own scale, like Ryan alluded to earlier. So North is very busy for that reason. And so, but anyway, the request will come from Texas Forest Service to TIFMAS overhead where Kyle is residing. We'll push that down to the branch coordinators. Typically, they'll identify kind of a strategic plan to say there's been a request for 3 strike teams, and they may say, hey, North, you're going to fill 2 of them. So at that point, the North Branch, and I'll credit Kyle with this, but it was broken down into 5 divisions because I can't manage 32 counties with the number of departments in each county. So when I get the request, I then push that to the coordinators that are managing the divisions within the North Branch. They in turn contact their departments. And so the request goes out, the resources come back into the division guys. The division guys then send that to me. And then I sit down and decide we're going to build a strike team and these are the units that are going to be on it. I keep track of how many people go out the door. First of all, you have to have qualified people. So if we're tasked with a wildland assignment, we have to meet qualifications for that. And so we have a spreadsheets maintained by Texas Forest Service where we can go in there at any moment in time and look an individual up and determine what their qualification level is. But at any rate, when the resources come back, we build the strike teams. Then the messages go out, and I say, okay, Louisville, Flower Mound, the Colony, and Carrollton, you guys are team 130. Your strike team leader is this person. We push out the phone numbers. They start talking, and then I take all that information and put it in a state spreadsheet. The state spreadsheet is managed by the Forest Service down in the EOC, and what they start doing is plugging in the necessary information so that on the back end, everyone can get reimbursed, because everything that we're doing is covered by the state of Texas. The departments are made whole, and that's real important for people to understand. People that get frustrated because they think, well, why are you sending all of our resources out the door and we're spending all this money for you to go help, South Texas, right? The state of Texas is paying for this. So, but that's kind of a real quick snapshot of how this works. And as problems develop, Kyle is my speed dial guy. If the problems in the field, if there's a situation, it'll come back to me. And if I don't know the answer, can't answer it, I call Kyle. And that's basically how it works. And then Kyle's dealing with a whole nother set of responsibilities.
Well, and I think probably your biggest frustration is, this is with anything. It's running a firehouse. Ryan's my chief, and when he asks somebody to do something and they say, yeah, they're going to do it, and they never get back to him or they never finish it. There's a lot of, we always talk about, right, Ryan, the idea people. I got a great idea, but they don't, there's no follow through, right, Scott? It's like, how many times you go, really? All right, go do it. Well, I want to talk about me doing it. So I know, T, the frustration has got to be sometimes when you're asking some of these other coordinators, hey, I need this, and they just take their time getting back to you like it's not an issue. You're trying to put all this together. They need to really wrap their arms around the fact that this is time sensitive. If you're asking for stuff, it's not, unless it's a hurricane coming, that kind of thing. With wildland stuff, we need it right now. Don't call me back in 3 hours, or don't make me call you back in 3 hours. Did you? Oh, I haven't had time yet. So, they took my trash out, and I had to get my car washed and all that kind of stuff. So I know that's frustrating when you're dealing with some of these chiefs out there that are not doing their jobs.
Well, it's a balancing act, Rick, and part of the problem is, and we're working to solve this, but part of the problem is we're managing a system. Keith Kiplinger used to say we're running the largest volunteer fire department in the country, right? And so all of us, Kyle, myself, all the branch coordinators, we all have full-time jobs, right? I'm certainly blessed because I work for a city that believes in the program. They invest in the program. And I have a fire chief who is extremely patient with the demands of this position. And so
Mark McNeil defines patience. If you see him, look up the word in the dictionary, you see Chief Mark McNeil's picture in there.
Yeah, but it is what we're doing is time sensitive. We need to get moving. We need to get people out the door. There's people waiting on our decisions. It is, but we also have to keep in mind that, it's invariably, Chief, what happens is this request comes in at 6:30 on a Friday night as I'm leaving out the door to take, to go to dinner, right? And this comes in. Well, it's not something that I say, well, hey, man, I'm heading out the door to go to dinner. So, when I get done, I'll get to work on this, right? So it's a bit of a balancing act. And right now, like I said, we have 13 teams out, 2 hand crews. While we've been doing this, I'm texting with guys because we're trying to fill some spots. And this is the way I look at it. And this is my own stance on this. The end user, the Wichita West of the world, they're waiting on help and they need it yesterday, right? The crews that we are sending out the door, my job is to support this program and to support those people. And the guy that's going out the door, he needs an E-number. That E-number is important for him. It's how he checks in at the incident. He needs it when he shows up to get where he's going. And it's my job to make sure he has it. I take that seriously because what I don't want to do is create a jackpot for a bunch of guys downstream. They're hell fighters. They're going out to do what we're asking them to do. And the other thing on a side note, if a guy's like willing to do paperwork, I don't want to slow anything down. I want to get him what he needs, right? So, but so and that's the way I view this. And unfortunately, the system exists that the only way we can manage it today is the way we're doing it, and that takes it takes a little focus and time away from other things, personal and professional, unfortunately.
Well, you just brought up, because I'm looking at Ryan and I go, he runs an international corporation. He's the runs a huge business and runs our fire department, which is pretty busy. He's out the door and everything. And then there's training, there's meeting, everything that goes into that, like everybody else out there, does things. But the commitment side, and I've said it before, and everybody on this panel and our five, Scott, I tell people I love hanging with you guys because you love the fire service so much you can't help but admire them. There's people who are all in, and there's people that are bystanders that are up there, throwing snowballs from the stands, and other people. Those are the ones that they like to have the tattoos and the hats and the t-shirts, but they produce nothing. But so Kyle, I want to jump back to Scott and Ryan here, but so Terry talked about, walk us through for a lot of our listeners. So, and we could talk about the border thing in a second, Terry. Kyle, walk us through the all hazards part of TIFMAS. We talk wildland, but when we say all hazards, let's talk about those different things, hurricane, and walk through the resources that you said, which I think is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. So, like I said, TIFMAS is all hazards, and just to give you a little snippet of what that can mean, when Harvey came through, TIFMAS deployed 985 personnel, 296 pieces of equipment to the Texas Gulf Coast. And so imagine if that TIFMAS wouldn't have been in place, we would have had no capability to get help down there without jumping through a lot of hoops, and a lot of credit it goes to everyone involved in that. And it's guys like Terry that are rostering at 5:30 in the evening or 6 o'clock before they go to dinner. But really anything, Chief, we've had requests for water systems getting knocked out in cities, and we need tenders. And so we'd send them 2 strike teams of tenders. And our state coordinator, our previous state coordinator, right now our state coordinator is JJ Whittick from the Austin area. But the state coordinator who actually has served in TIFMAS probably the longest other than Joe Flo was Keith Kiplinger. And he would tell you that he's personally benefited from TIFMAS whenever he's had issues in his city with some of these all hazards task forces that we send out. And basically the same type of thing there. But what we've all agreed upon is that the local entities kind of determine through credentialing through the Texas Commission and the State Firemen's and Fire Marshals Association. That's how we determine credentials for going out on all hazards deployments. So,
well, and like I said, I think it's phenomenal. Scott, you and I and Terry were part of that. Like I said, before there was TIFMAS, and we had this all hazards. We had it all. We were sending it out before there was anything, and we had a group of cities, Frisco, everybody in our area there in Denton County. All the city managers were in. I mean, remember, everybody's like, what do you need? In fact, Claude King, Terry, and Scott, our city manager, when we were on our way to St. Joe and to Nakona, I called him as we're passing UNT and said, hey, that thing you wanted us to do, we're on our way. And we're already leaving town. And he's like, all right, have at it. He wasn't worried. Actually, I want to say it's too loud. He wasn't worried about reimbursement things. He was worried about what, he wanted to go to COG, go to in front of his fellow wizards at the Council of Governments to say, what we did? We just sent people 2.5 hours to go help somebody out. And then the whole point was that's what we need to do. And the participation part, Scott, is huge. You've got a very proactive city. The colony is booming. But you've had some great bosses that are the same way, where they support whatever you need done. Oh, sorry, Scott.
You're exactly right, Rick. And I got to admit up front, we were can you hear me?
Yeah, gotcha.
We were real active in TIFMAS for a while. Matter of fact, I deployed on that Jacksboro fire. That was one of my first deployments. And we got to a point where we had so much going on. We all sat down and said, okay, we got to push some things to the side. So we kind of stepped back after Harvey a little bit and haven't been real active. But now that we got all our firehouses open, I think we're going to get back into it. But some of the credentialing slowed us down a little bit, and guys' interest in wanting to get that, just because we don't do a lot of wildland stuff here. So we've kind of stepped back. But in the early days, we were very involved. And I'll tell you a quick story about Bobby. Right after Harvey, we sent a couple crews down there, but I certainly was involved. And Bobby called and said, "Hey, man, I need you to write an article about your involvement in Harvey." And I probably got some people in Tiff mad at me, because I wrote him an article like overnight and sent it in. I'm sure someone probably goes, "Who's this guy? He didn't even show up." But it caused me to do some research and learn a little bit more about it. But yeah, we're I've got a great boss who supported it. And back in the time when you were wondering when you were going to get paid, it seemed like fiscal years went by. But the great thing about it is everybody stuck with it and kept identifying the problems and going to the state, like say NIMKID, Texas Forest Service, and solved all these to the system that we have today, which is, outstanding. I don't see us ever using TIFMIS unless we have, a tornado or something, but we'll certainly start talking about getting back involved in the all hazards part of it again in the very near future. It's something
you built yourself out of the wildland. You had all that grass, and now you've got high rises, and you built yourself out of that system. So
yeah, we have a fire in the median, and we deck gun it and go home.
Well, and I got to say this, Terry, you remember this one, and Ryan, you've heard me tell this story thing. So I think it was Ike, right, Terry? When Daryl went down, Chief Brown's the chief in Grapevine. He was one of our assistant chiefs. Actually, Terry took Daryl's spot, promoted up as bomb and arson chief to assistant chief. And do you remember the press release from down there? They're interviewing Daryl, and he said yes. He goes, we rescued a family that were on their roof of their house. This is the hurricane. They had a pet monkey with them, and then we had a bull that got loose that was charging people down the street. And then you remember the reporter says, "So we're happy to report that the monkey and the family are safe and off the roof." The bull, however, ended up in the firehouse smoker, and they show them cooking this bull. I go, "Oh no, that's the worst." They're going to be showing this in PIO classes forever. But it charged the deputies. What they unfortunately had to shoot it, and they're like, "Well, we got to feed all these firefighters, so they're a smoker or something." We went from saving a monkey and a family on the roof and a bull running to the bull. It just was just perfect how they said it. But so Ryan, let's talk for a second about the challenges you have as a fire chief in our area. I work for you. You said it before that as much as we want to participate, so often we're the recipient. We're calling, in this area. And if we're not the ones calling, we're actually going to Vernon or we're going or whatever, that kind of thing. Part of our actual mutual aid ahead of time thing. So the challenge there for you is just that we're usually, like you said before, in the fight.
That's a big challenge for us. So it's kind of twofold. One, we're a 100% volunteer department. All of our guys work a regular day job. So trying to have the time off to go on a 14-day deployment with possible extension, there's been sometimes we can get people out and do a 7-day crew swap or something. So finding people that can actually go is the first thing. The second one is just we're burning, so it's hard to say let's take our resources, our personnel, our apparatus, and put them on a wildland strike team or task force just to respond back to our area, or to have them sitting a couple counties away where they can't help our area. Last year, we received 4 requests from the Northwest branch. Casey Ramsey called me 4 different times going, "Hey, can we get your type 6? And you have, one personnel, any personnel, or just give us a truck. We'll staff, we'll deploy it." And it's like, it's hard to give up that resource in our area. We've been relying pretty heavily on all of our grass trucks and our tenders here locally, within Wichita County or, our neighboring counties, Wilbarger, Archer, they've all been burning quite a bit in the last few years. So it's hard to be able to free up those resources and knowing that then we catch a fire and we don't have that truck, we don't have those personnel to respond locally. When we're not, Texas is always in fire season, but when we're not actively burning like that, it's a lot easier to say, "Hey, we'll free up our tender. Hey, we can free up, an extra engine or something to send down on an all hazard type basis, for the hurricanes or, if we do get tornado response, stuff like that."
Well, between you and Chief Andy Payne at Iowa Park, Kyle and Scott and Terry, we've been doing this forever, automatic aid, helping each other out and that. But not too long ago, Ryan and Andy, they just said, "We're not going to wait on anybody else. We're going to do automatic aid between us." So we're jumping the gun right away. There's times during the day we might be short, and they've got guys. There's times where they're short, and we get on it and get after it right away. But and Ryan, I've so many times between you and your assistant chief, Michael Albert, it's been okay. Let's hold some people in the south part of the county because. So, for example, when you were in Electra, right? I was the only one back in the state. And, remember I was telling you, well, I'm putting my list together. If I get a structure fire, I put my list, if I get a brush fire, and I'm the only one sitting there. And resources that are south of us are driving past me going, I'm like, and so you guys have to strike that balance too of not only can we not send someone maybe on a deployment, but, if we can't send everybody up north, you've said that before, and leave nothing down here. So in the midst of you responding to an incident, you're trying to strike that balance as well.
So we had a lot of that. We had most of the Wichita County resources were up almost to the border, and all the Archer County units were pretty well south Archer County, almost Young County on 2 separate fires. We had trying to have something in the middle just for some initial attack response in there. If a call struck out, just to have somebody on scene to at least know what we had going and not trying to come from one end of a county to the other.
Exactly. And that's that. Oh, Terry, the other day, when they came out, they had the rehab, sandwiches and things like that. So they gave us a bunch of oranges. So we pull up next to Ryan, we're staged, and we throw 3 oranges at. I say, here, if anybody is doing a juggling act right now, and he ends now again. He ends up, he's standing in the street juggling oranges. I go, all right, is there anything this guy can't do? I said, and I was joking. I didn't think he was going to actually juggle them, but go ahead, Scott.
Hey, Rick, Ryan brought up a good point that I think it adds to this. It's gotten to the point where we've talked about departments coming together, but, now it's if you have an apparatus and maybe 2 qualified firefighters and need an engine boss, you can start putting those groups together also and have multiple members from different departments working as one. And I remember when that wasn't always the case, but that's been a neat addition to where you can get those qualifications mixed and match. You may be from 3 different departments on one apparatus, making sure that you provide everything that's needed.
Oh, I've seen them where they show up in their different uniforms. Yeah. Terry, you've told me I've got an engine from Sanger, thanks to Chief David Pennington and one of your chiefs, your partner. Yet there's nobody from Sanger on it. That you guys just fill. Just fill the seats, which is pretty incredible.
We had a strike team that went out 3 weeks ago. David gave us an engine boss because I didn't have an engine boss for the engine, so I sent 2 of our guys with his guy on our truck. While they were out there, Haltom City's truck broke down, and I had nothing to replace it with. So they're up. I think they were up north somewhere, but my only choice at that point is to reach out to, say, South Texas or South Central branch or something. So I'm going to have somebody come 7-hour drive time to meet that team. David just gave that strike team his unit from his home agency, put 2 Haltom City guys on it. So there's a lot of swapping around that goes. Ultimately, and that's a great point, Scott, because on the wildland side, it's hard to get credentials. It's hard to get through task books. And so, we always tell people we can fill your trucks with what we need. Ideally, what I want is your agency to get your people out the door to get them experience, but we have to do it in the right way. And that's, we do that commonly.
Yeah.
Terry, how many TIFMAS trucks are out there now that TIFMAS has actually provided to departments? Do you guys know?
Kyle
yeah. So I oversee the apparatus committee, but we're over 60 trucks now.
Wow.
And adding every day. The legislature's trying to support us the best they can with what they have, and
that's amazing.
We're trying to expand that program. We've actually started trying to concentrate on replacement of apparatus too, because there wasn't an apparatus replacement program because the funding just wasn't there. And so we're taking a look at all that stuff right now. We're hoping to get some more on the road. But Chief, if I could,
go ahead. You
were talking about a minute ago about how you're burning, so you can't give any resources out of that area. And to Terry, what Terry was talking about a minute ago, a lot of credit to NIMKID and Country Wilder for the number 2 at TDM we've really changed a lot of things like the STAR process. But one of the most important and critical changes over the last year even has been we're using fire forecasting, meteorology. We get all the fire forecasters, the weather forecasters in the same room, and we actually are pre-positioning apparatus to certain areas based on the forecast for extreme fire danger. And since that program has been established, don't quote me on this because I haven't gotten all the data in, but best I can figure, they're about 95% accurate, where we get a team in place based on their information, and they're there when the fire starts instead of responding after the fire starts. And so it's been a little difficult to roll out to fire chiefs to, in the state to go, why are we sending trucks to a fire that doesn't exist yet? But our data so far is I'm telling you, it's about 95% accurate that we're putting teams in the right area to jump on the fire that would take 10 teams if we didn't. But since we've got a team there, they knock it out.
And Kyle, I'm glad you brought that up, because what a lot of people don't know, and Scott, you hear this all the time because you're out there teaching, guys going, hey, Chief Thompson, I'm going to be in Houston next week. How about we do lunch? You go, yeah, I can drive 5 hours. What they don't realize is, I could drive from Lake Michigan to Iowa across Chicago in 2 hours. It takes me 2 hours to get from where we're at, Ryan, right? To DFW, the airport.
To Dallas, yeah.
I could drive 12 hours to Chicago, and I can't from here, and I can't make it till like El Paso in 12. I'm just so this state, I'm not whining, it's just a big ass state. If you don't pre-deploy these units and cut some of the hours off of that response time. Terry, I remember our guys were sitting outside of Abilene, which is a little ride from Amarillo, just sitting there, and we had to move them to Amarillo, and it was like the blink of an eye they were there because they were already there. Instead of sending them 6 hours, it was a shorter response time because of the forward thinking, Kyle, like you said.
Well,
we get this all set up ahead of time.
The idea that a fire chief would draw exception to the fact that we want to position something close to where something could happen should look at the very own business model of which they exist.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
And to your point, Chief Lasky, I have from El Paso to Texarkana, I have the entire north half of the state of Texas from Waco up. For me to drive to El Paso to Texarkana is 850 miles.
Yeah.
It's an entire day on the road if I don't stop. Yeah. And so our ability to pre-position resources has been a huge asset, and we got to give a lot of credit to TDM leadership for allowing that to happen, because ultimately they write the check for that to happen.
Exactly. And Ryan makes me drive like 1,000 miles to go to fire sometimes. He'll go, like the night we went to whatever that place is out in Vernon.
We're out Wilbarger Ranch down near or Wagner Ranch.
Wagner Ranch. Yeah, he goes, what are you doing? He goes, they're looking for us. Yeah, I'll drive. I remember sitting there, and Terry, remember I told you it's 3 a.m. I'm going, what the hell am I doing here? We've been here. We drove forever. I'm in Connecticut, I think. I don't know where I'm at. And they're all dressed up with their stuff. And I'm like, I'm looking, going, what? This is unbelievable. I mean, I just drove like forever to get to this thing. And, because that's like with Salka, when John will go, yeah, I'm going to teach at Connecticut today. I go, you flying? He goes, no, it's a 45-minute drive. I go, you can drive around New England the time it takes you, Kyle, to drive from Frisco to Louisville. Yeah, I mean, so there's been times when he did that, I'm like in the cab going, the hell am I? But anyway, Terry, real quick before we, and we're going to run a little over here. So guys, hang in there with us. Pete's always good, our producer, about that. Terry, talk real quick. Don't want to leave without talking about what you're doing at the border, because we talked about all hazards. We talked about wildland. We talked about participation. We had, like I said, this was perfect having Chief Fetzer, my chief, on here to talk about what he has. He's the receiver for that stuff. Talk about what you're doing at the border now too, what you're doing to support that.
Well, the state's initiative at the border to try to secure it and to kind of systematically manage the number of people crossing the border. So in order to do that down there, they've had to pour resources into standing up temporary facilities. They've shifted resources around to make space available to allow for processing of immigrants, and So, but in order to support everything, because it's a large scale endeavor and it's spread out along the border, it's not a spot, it's multiple spots. So in order to do that, there's a couple of things that TDEM had to address here. And of course, the security and the law enforcement side. So you tap into DPS and that function is taken care of. And then they need EMS resources. So we have a system within the state of Texas and the EMTF program, and that's supported through dishes. And so they tackle that. Well, they needed fire protection and they needed resources from that side of things. So they called on TIFMAS. And so we got on a short conference call, and the program was explained. Doesn't take long. We need stuff, and we need it here on this day. And so we've done that for 2 years now, I think.
Wow.
And fully supporting that program, and again with a great partnership through TDEM, and so yeah, and then that's an all hazard assignment. So any firefighter in the state of Texas that is in the system as a firefighter in the state of Texas is eligible to participate in that program in all hazards activities, and so. We have at 4 different locations within the state of Texas, we have a Type 1 engine with 4 firefighters on duty 24 hours a day. So we assign 8 per site, and there's 4 on duty, is 4 off duty. But the entire time you're in that location, you are on duty. It's just you're either at the facility or you're not at the facility. So,
well, I think that's pretty incredible. Again, this entire program, TIFMAS, is wonderful. And we talk, like we said, we start off the show, Kyle, talking about. You've got California. They've always had it down when it comes to large scale incidents. They're another model out there. Florida's doing a great job, and a bunch of other people. The Mavis division, Scott, you mentioned that for that. But I'm so proud of what we've been able to accomplish right here in the state of Texas. And it's not just Texans helping Texans, like we say. You're pushing them out everywhere when it comes to that. So let's do this. We're running out of time here. Pete's very good about it, but we always do some closing thoughts. Ryan, you've been here with us before, so let's start. Kyle, let's talk closing thoughts on the whole process, TIFMAS, everything, advice. If somebody and then you can finish. If somebody want to get a hold of you, say, okay, can I talk to you? Can we do a conference call? Can we get together? How do I get this going to my state? Or all those different things. If you could finish with your closing thoughts.
I would be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity here and thank a couple of key people at the Texas Forest Service. Wes Moorhead and Jared Carnes have been key partners at making all this work, because without them at the ESF4 desk pulling the trigger, it could really be a blockade there to where TIFMAS didn't go out. But, like today, I just got this hot off the press. In the last 7 days, we responded to 200 fires, almost 30,000 acres burned in the state of Texas. And so it's like we always talk about in everything we do. It all goes back to relationships. What makes the program work is the relationships and the communication and leaving the ego at the door. And if you don't have that starting out, you're not going to have a successful program no matter what you do, because there's so many areas where TIFMAS could get blockaded and not sent out the door. So I would say that's number one takeaway about TIFMAS is our communication and working together. If you want to get involved or know more information, TIFMAS.org has all the information you need. It's got my cell phone on there. It's out in the public. My wife loves my cell phone at work, just like all of yours do, I'm sure. But call me anytime, and I can give you my experiences. And the thing I would credit the state with is we're really trying to develop it and make it better than it is today, which it's already a pretty special thing. So I appreciate you having me on today, and I look forward to answering any questions that anyone may have. But thanks again.
Perfect. And stay with us, Kyle, because when we go off the air, we're going to finish some things up. So Ryan, my chief, as I always say, my chief, I'm blessed to have you. First of all, Kyle, Ryan's wife has the same feeling about his work cell phone as well, but he was sneaky. All right. She's a member of our department. So he found an end around, because he could go, but you're in a department too anyway. But Chief, your closing thoughts on the whole system, buddy.
It's a great system. It's an invaluable system to have, especially as an indie user of it so often. Encourage those, if you're in Texas, get involved with TIFMIS, volunteer or career departments. If you're not in Texas, if your state has some sort of mutual aid system, join it or encourage them to, develop one. If anyone wants to get a hold of me, I can be reached by email, chief@wichitawestfd.org.
Oh, thank you. Like I said, it was such, when Terry and I talked about this, when he mentioned having Kyle on, and then we talked about having you, it was perfect. Let's put the whole thing together where we're talking, but we're not just talking about a program. We're actually talking about someone that can sit there and go, well, yeah, it's a good program, but this sucks. But to be able to bring that all together is awesome. Scott, closing thoughts?
My final thoughts, I guess, I would direct towards fire chiefs, and specifically in Texas, if you're tuning in. Look at the new TIFMIS. A lot of things have improved. I know in the early days there were a lot of frustrations. I remember being frustrated, and there were a lot of things that weren't figured out. But thanks to the work of all the names that have been mentioned today, a lot of that's improved. We're having those conversations right now about getting back involved. So put the ego aside, and your turn will come. Don't get your feelings hurt if you don't get called to go to California or wherever you're going. Just be patient and understand it. A lot of people have been doing this for a long time, and you got to kind of prove yourself in some areas. So give it another look if you haven't looked at it in the last 7 or 8, 9 years, and participate if you can. Well, I can be reached at sthompson@thecolonytx.gov.
Perfect. I was going to ask you for that, and you said something good about because Terry does a very good job at using everybody. He doesn't just use his favorites. He doesn't just use this. He reaches. It's a balancing act. I've noticed of him reaching out to different. So it's not always Louisville. It's what. There's a time where he's very good at balancing who he's using and everything. So
he's one of the best at that, Chief, for sure.
Terry's my go-to. Elroy Jetson. So closing thoughts there, Elroy.
Well, I would obviously, if you don't have a program like this, if you're outside the state of Texas, you don't have a program like this, explore it, start the conversation. There's plenty of resources in the state of Texas is one of those, and you can certainly reach out for that information, and that's great. If you're inside the state of Texas, you don't participate in TIFMIS, I urge you to, and if you need information, questions, you feel free to reach out. Kyle is a wealth of information. I'm a wealth of information. I don't always, it's not always accurate and correct, but I'm never shy of giving you an opinion. But no, in all seriousness, reach out. The other thing is, and Scott mentioned that, you're not always going to get picked for the major league assignment, right? Sometimes you got to pitch in Round Rock or Frisco. By the way, at the minor league ballpark for the Texas Rangers in Frisco, and the Cowboys in the PGA, and but in all seriousness, the end user of this is a lot of people that need help, and that's why we all got in this business in your respective jurisdictions. And so, we mentioned egos, we mentioned the fact that you're not always going to get the first string quarterback assignment. All of this is important, all of it. I always say that the most visible part of landing the president on the south lawn at the White House is the guy flying that helicopter. Somebody went out there and stuck those little pieces of plywood for him to put the wheels on, and somebody mowed the grass, and somebody, it's all important. And in this program, it's all important. And let's never lose focus of what ultimately we're trying to do, which is to offer some really critical services to anyone who's in need. And I think that's the most rewarding part of all of this.
Well, and like we said, a state mutual aid program, as we title this one, that works. We had 2 great guests, Assistant Chief Kyle Mills from Frisco, Texas, and I know they have an open door there to our viewers. If you want to see, I joke about it, but I'm serious, that it's an incredible fire department to visit, a lot of resource, a lot of cool stuff going on. So they'll take anybody and welcome you and tour and show you everything. And then when you go right next door, you go to the colony, and Scott's guys will do the same stuff. As Terry always says, he wants to come right out with Chief Ryan Fetzer and get his task book signed off, because he can do that probably in one incident with Ryan, as many fires as he goes to. So we've had two great guests, Chief Ryan Fetzer from Wichita West. Guys, this has been great talking about, a little bit of bragging, but there's a lot of people that just aren't able to pull off what you guys have been doing with TIFMAS. So hats off to you, to Kyle and Terry and Ryan. Thanks for joining us. Like I said, it's easy to sit and talk about a program without having the user sitting there, the person that's actually going, where the hell are they? Or this is what I need when the world's on fire around you, and balancing that out with counties and things and so on and so forth. So appreciate everybody. We got their emails again. Rewind. What you got to do? We're all on all the social media things, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff. You can check us out. Our next show date for our Hump Day crew, we always have the third Wednesday, is September 20th. We don't ever have a script. We have great guests like we did today, or we just jump on there and Scott will go, hey, I want to talk about vent under search today. Okay. And Pete says, we're live, and off we go. But there's always some great Hump Day hangouts on Wednesdays, noon Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget about the great podcasts in the evening with some great people doing some great stuff on fireengineering.com, obviously. And in closing, we always ask you to please keep the men and women in armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. And remember this, please, never forgetting means never forgetting. Keep those in Maui, our Hawaiian firefighting family, in your thoughts and prayers. Be looking for that link that we can help. Just horrible. We can help some of the people that they're still manning firehouses and running calls, yet they have nowhere to live. They have no clothes. Pretty absolutely incredible. So thoughts and prayers with them. That being said, be safe. God bless you. And we'll see you next time.